This is Grape Video 36, Tying Grapevines, Part 2, Materials Used for Tying. Well, as a bit of a refresher, let's say that tying is defined as fastening parts of a grapevine to a trellis or other support structure, as we discussed in the last video. And it is important that we do say that products mentioned in this presentation are for educational purposes only. No endorsement of those products is implicitly or explicitly intended. Okay, here we go. We're going to go down a list of categories of materials used for tying grapevines. But before we do, I want to make it clear that this is not a comprehensive list by any means, and that you will find other materials available in the marketplace. And I just wanted to give you here a look at the various categories of tying materials and some discussion of those categories. So don't think that this is all there is, because you'll find even more if you go searching on the net. Okay, here we go. The first category I'm calling tying gadgets, and I list 3 of them. Okay, the first gadget I think is pronounced the Prothec, and it's really a fascinating little gadget. It's much like the twist ties that we're going to talk about, only this product comes in a continuous roll, and it's a plastic material with a wire embedded in it, like a twist tie. And the gadget that you see there helps to automate the tying process. Right here is a little hook that you grab the ends of the Prothec loop that you make, and then when you push down, the gears here at the back of the handle turn the little wheel that's cogged here, and they spin that hook that looks sort of like a crochet hook around to do the twisting automatically without having a lot of wrist action. And then the final part of the action is that it cuts the loop of Prothec tape off automatically with this cutter. It's quite an ingenious little gadget. Another tying gadget that's been around for quite a long while is called a max tapener, as shown here. And it's quite ingenious too. The end of it has a roll of plastic tape, as the arrow points to, and it goes around the object you want to tie together, staples it, and cuts it off. And we're going to show you this in the next video in action. There's an example of the finished product, but we'll get a better look at it in the next video. The third gadget that I'm going to show is a stapler. And I've used this on and off for a few years now. It's a French-built gadget, and there's a staple held like this, and they come in boxes of 4,000, I think, more or less, is shown here. And you just put it over the cane and over the wire and squeeze, and it staples it, and the cane is held to the wire. So that was tying gadgets, and you probably will come upon others if you search far and wide for tying gadgets. The next category I'm going to call plastic ties. And I only have one example of that, and this I believe is called an Agrolock tie. But there are many, but I don't have any on hand right now, and I've used several over the years. These generally, as we're going to look at costs later on, are more expensive to use, but they don't require much skill, because the way the plastic ties are made, they interlock relatively easy. So we'll have a little more to say about these later on. Twist ties, or you may think of them as twistums, or bread wrapper ties that you see in the grocery store closing lots of different plastic bags often. These twist ties are very common in some vineyard areas, very inexpensive, very easy to use, and we'll talk about their application when we demonstrate how to use them in the next video. Twine. I might as well just say it right now. I am very biased towards the use of twine. I think it's the most universal of tying materials, and you can do anything and everything with twine. That's why we're going to have a fourth video just on some knots to use with twine. Let's make some introductory remarks about the use of twine for tying grapevines. First of all, you can see in at least 2 or 3 of these pictures where people are tying, that's what they're using. Larger commercial growers tend to use twine a lot, and they use it in a variety of ways, and we're going to talk about those. Sometimes twine is purchased in large bales in one long continuous bundle like this. You can see I've tied those off at perhaps 15-inch lengths, and then if we cut them like this, and I've also used a hatchet. I've seen people use an oversized paper cutter to make these cuts, and then you get these bundles of a specified length that can be used for repetitive tasks like tying up renewals one after the other, without any cutting of the twine in the vineyard at all. And it becomes a very efficient, very handy way to use twine in the vineyard. They look like this. Another way to accomplish that, if you have balls of twine, is just to wrap around something like the end of a hammer and the end of a vise and go round and round and round and round to make a bundle of those pieces of twine of the same length. Tie it together, and then if you use your imagination, you would cut the loops at both ends and you've got pieces ready to go. I strongly urge the use of natural jute twine when you're tying grapevines. And you must use at least 3-ply, not 2-ply twine. This is the type of roll of twine that I use a lot and have used for years. It costs in the vicinity of 85 cents to $1 to buy that roll. I buy them in cases. I think there are 48 rolls in a case, something like that. But this is an excellent material for tying. I have a grape grower friend who tells me that he uses this very thin propylene plastic twine in his vineyard and has no problems with it. But I am very biased against the use of plastic twine in the vineyard, and especially if it's the larger diameter material that is more common than this. We used that years ago, and it hangs around for years and years and years, and the trellises can just become full of twine that will not rot away, that hangs on. When it does come off, it can get in your equipment and make a mess in your mowers and other equipment, and I don't think it's worth it. I really would urge you to try to use the natural jute twine if at all possible. One little item that is so very handy when tying grapevines with twine and using those small rolls that I showed you earlier is this finger knife. Once you get used to using a finger knife, you'll just think it's the nuts. And these little knives cost anywhere from $1 to $3 each. They come in sizes. I guess I can see they're the size 12 on that. You can buy them in boxes of different sizes for different fingers, or you can get larger sizes. And then my girls that have tied for me in the past like to take some electrical tape and put it around the finger ring part of this finger knife, and that makes it a little easier to use. So if you start out with finger knives that are a little larger than necessary, you can always make them smaller by wrapping some electrical tape around them. Those are my own personal daughters that I'm saying. Girls, they've gotten too old now, and they've moved away, and they don't help me tie grapevines anymore. But they used to be pretty good at it. Not because they wanted to be, because Dad said, we're going tying today. There's another look at. If you look online under finger knives, you'll find a source of them. And they last quite a long time. Enough on twine for now. We'll come back and have lots of things to say about twine. This next category I'm calling stretchable ties. And I first saw these in this vineyard in Tuscany. And I was just thrilled to be there several years ago. And this is a vineyard way past harvest. And it's senescing, but when I look closer, son of a gun, how were these cordons tied to the wire with this rubbery twine, stretchable ties? And I asked, and they're left in place sometimes for a couple, 3 years, and then cut off, and things are retied again. And because they are stretchable, they don't tend to girdle like normal twine would or other kinds of tying materials. I wish I knew more about these. Do you notice how they don't wrap the cordon around the wire? They just run it along the wire and then use this stretchable tie material. And that saves a lot of headaches when you're trying to get the old cordon free from the wire. There's a closer look. There's more to be said about this picture another time. We'll leave it at that for now. This stretchable tie material comes in different gauges, and there are a few manufacturers of this, so you can go shopping to see which you would like best. I've only played with the thinner gauge material on the left. We'll show you how we apply these to the vine in the next video. Well, nothing. What do we mean by nothing? We're going to show you a technique of tying grapevines that involves and requires absolutely no materials whatsoever. Stay tuned in the next video. We'll show you what that involves. Let's cover the cost of grapevine tying materials a little. This information's a few years old. I put it together for a talk quite a while ago, but in relative terms, I think it's still appropriate and useful. Well, the gadgets that we talked about at the start of this presentation actually, by my calculations, have a very modest cost per tie. Anywhere from a half to about 1 cent per tie. So the materials cost for using these gadgets is quite reasonable. But this does not include the tool or the maintenance of the tool and upkeeping it. And that's why most users of these gadgets tend to be weekend farmers or hobbyists, but not the large commercial growers, because over time these gadgets tend to require maintenance. Something doesn't go quite right anymore, and the upkeep and the keeping them working becomes a frustration. But for many small growers who don't want to take the time to learn how to tie with other materials, these gadgets can be quite useful. And their cost per tie, as you can see, not including the tool, is relatively modest. Now, natural twine that I showed you is in the same category, either a fraction of a cent or around a penny per tie for the materials that I typically use, so that's also quite economical. Twist ties are extremely economical, fractions of a penny, sometimes as many as 5 ties per penny, so these are very inexpensive and can be used very easily and are used by large numbers of commercial growers. That stretchable tie material, I don't really have a lot of experience with it, but the price of that, as I calculated it, starts to escalate, especially if you get into the larger diameter ties. But maybe it's worth it if it's going to last you a while. Here's where the costs really start to escalate in that category that I called individual plastic ties. You see they range in cost here from anywhere from around 2 cents per tie all the way up to 35 cents. And often the sales point for these products are that they will last many years and don't have to be reapplied each year. Well, the truth is that most tying regimes that we use with vines don't really need to have something that's going to hold it for years and years and years. If you tie the end of a cane along a wire to establish a cordon, after the first year, it's generally held by the wire, embedded enough in the wire that it doesn't need a tie. And so the rationale of these being economical because of the number of years of use doesn't really make sense to me often. And there's always the need at the end of the use of these ties to go back and take them off and get them out of the vineyard, or they'll be hanging around forever. So I don't favor these often, but for some people they may be just the right thing. Well, that's a brief explanation of tying materials. We hope that's helpful to you. In our next video, we're going to actually demonstrate the application of these various tying materials in the vineyard. But until then, happy grape growing.